sitting there, could you please join the tables in the front? And the gentleman sitting on this side to my left. నా లెఫ్ట్ సైడ్కి కూర్చున్న వాళ్ళందరూ కూడా కొంచెం ముందరకు వస్తారండి. ముందు ఉన్న టేబుల్స్ని ఫిల్అప్ చేస్తే. Thank you very much for your cooperation. So once again, Namaste, Namaskaram. I'm Deepika Mahidhara and I'm your host for the Happy Cities Summit 2019 Amaravati. We are at day 2 of the summit. This year's summit had a small prelude. The prelude was a mayors and city leaders roundtable that was conducted on the 12th of February, in which a few cities, about 5 or 6 new and upcoming cities like Amaravati, presented what they are doing and shared best practices. The mayors and city leaders of those cities shared best practices. New Clark City in the Philippines, the port city Colombo from Sri Lanka, Guangzhou, Mazgan and one other city from Morocco. These were some of the cities that presented. Of course, Amaravati also presented, and there were experts who gave input on a few aspects like water, which is a very, very important aspect. So they gave their input on how to manage some of our natural resources while building greenfield cities, which is one of the focus areas of our summit this year. Ladies and gentlemen, yesterday we had the Honorable Chief Minister of Andhra Pradesh inaugurated the summit in 2019. He was here with us for about an hour, and he also laid the foundation stone for 30 projects worth rupees 8,000 crore. These projects have already been awarded and work has begun as part of city building in the city of Amaravati. That was one of the highlights. A couple of MOUs were signed also towards urbanization. Natural assets for sustainable economies. These are the conversations that are going to happen today. Now, for those of you who've just arrived this morning, we are in the second edition of the Happy Cities Summit in 2019. The first edition, a very successful one, took place in 2018, April of 2018. We had over 1,500 delegates then from over 15 countries. They were, like all of you, academicians, experts in city building and urban planning. They were city leaders, people representing governments, industrialists, and other social organizations. This time also, we have the same kind of diaspora. We have, however, over 30 countries participating at this summit in the second edition. We're very grateful to have all of you here with us. Without much ado, I'm going to invite onto stage our panelists and our moderator for the first session. Please join me, ladies and gentlemen, as I welcome Dr. Gopichand Katragadda, founder and CEO, Mylan Foundry. Thank you, sir, for joining us. Dr. Gopichand is going to moderate the session on vibrant ecosystem for young entrepreneurs. Joining him on the panel will be Mr. Satish Kamath, President, Sri City. Mr. Parag Dhol, MD, Inventus India. Thank you for joining us. Mr. Hugo Salomoa. Thank you for joining us. He is International Relations Advisor, Belo Horizonte, Brazil. Mr. D. Ramakrishna, CEO, F-Tronics Systems. Mr. Winnie Patro, CEO, AP Innovation Society. So Mr. Patro isn't here. We have Ms. Stefania Costanza, CG Italy. Thank you, ma'am, for joining us. We have Mr. V. Ram Manohar Rao Garu, IRAS, Special Commissioner, APCRDA. Thank you for joining us. I will now hand it over to the moderator. Sir, I'm going to request you, Dr. Gopichand, to please introduce yourself in a couple of lines. Also, if you could introduce the panelists and then the panel itself. Thank you very much. This panel is scheduled to be approximately between 60 to 90 minutes.
So, Deepika, that's 90 minutes. So, it's a pleasure and privilege to be here in Vijayawada. This is where my roots are from. Both sides of my family are from Krishna district. And it's the first time I'm actually giving a talk after giving or even moderating a session after doing several such sessions throughout the world. It's a privilege to come back home. In fact, I was telling my wife I'm going home. Right, so I look forward to the interaction, albeit fewer people, but it doesn't matter quantity. I'm sure the quality of interactions will be great. So I just wanted to say a few words about Vijayawada and Amravati, which is going to be coming up. I am born and brought up actually in Bangalore, though my roots are from Vijayawada. And there are many stories about Vijayawada which I heard growing up. So some of our guests are from outside the country, so I thought I'll mention a few. Vijayudu is named for Arjuna, and there is a story about Vijayawada being named after Arjuna, the hero of one of the heroes of Mahabharata. He is supposed to have worshipped Shiva and got his Pashupatastra here, which is a great weapon of mass destruction in those days. He is supposed to have obtained it here. So hence the city was to be named after him, so Vijayawada. But I do think that that is a later version. There is a stone inscription in one of the temples here, which describes this place as Pechewada. So obviously the history of this place goes quite a long way back. Of course, we used to grow up calling this place Bejawada, and there is a story about Bejawada also, that it comes from Bejamwada, because there is river Krishna which tunnels through between the hills. Bejam is tunneling or a hole. So many stories we grew up hearing, even though we were in distant Bangalore, coming here only once in a while. Of course, there is the Kanakadurga temple, which is extremely well known, and I think you are able to see it from here, if I'm right. Yesterday evening, I was able to see a temple. I think that is the Kanakadurga temple. If some of you have the time and you're from outside this place, I would strongly recommend you go to Undavali caves, which are Buddhist caves, which are also if you look at Amravati, Amravati has a very strong Buddhist heritage, before which it has history going back several thousands of years. But the most recent heritage that you will see, which still remains, is that of the Buddhist heritage. My grandfather and great-grandfather also are from these regions, Guntur and Krishna district. And, talking about entrepreneurship, even though this poem was not written about entrepreneurs, I'll still say it. It was written by my grandfather, whose statue is, by the way, on Tangband in Hyderabad. So this is in Telugu. I'll translate it. He said, Veeragandamu dechinaaramu, Veerudevado telupudi. I have brought the sandal paste to anoint the brave. Tell me who are the brave around here. I translate brave to entrepreneurs. But then he also said, Telugu natini Veera matanu chesi matram ramika. Palu tupakulu palu firangulu dari kaddaraka tappavu. In this journey of entrepreneurship, I'm taking poetic license. You will face guns and you will face tanks. That is obvious. Those who overcome those are who are going to get glory for themselves and glory for this region. Today we are going to be talking about the vibrant city for the youth. How do you create a vibrant ecosystem for the youth? Youth, if I look at the panel, I would say that we have a panel which is young, and that is because the way you think about it, of course, other than Hugo probably, who answers many points, but the way you think about youth is, for the youth are those for whom the optimism of the future is greater than the weight of the past. Right? So if you look at it that way, all of you are definitely youth. If for you, you start talking only about the past, then this conference is not necessarily for you, this session at least. This is about the future. This is about the people of the future. This is about the governments of the future. So when we talk about a city, the first thing which city should have are people. In fact, another poem said, Deshamante matti kadoy, Deshamante manushuloy. This is a statement which says a city is not about the buildings and the mud which makes it. It is about the people. So one of the things which you first need to look at are jobs. Right? So if you want to create a city which is vibrant, you need to create jobs. So here, let me just share with you what I'm doing today. Deepika wanted me to introduce myself. This is a good point. So today, Jan 18th was my last day at Tata Group. I was the Group Chief Technology Officer for a 100 billion plus company. So I left the company to start my own. And we incorporated very quickly. Jan 18th was Friday. Jan 21st was Monday. We incorporated on Monday, Jan 21st. A company called Mylin Foundry. And we work in the area of AI, artificial intelligence, in two verticals. One is for wellness, and one is for media and entertainment. So if any of you have read the books, 3 books written by Noah Harari, you will know that he talks about the fact that the population, the goal of the population is to go after bliss, divinity, and immortality. Right? So these are the areas that the future of the world is headed towards. We'll never reach immortality. We'll never be divine. Hopefully we can find bliss somewhere. But this is the direction that we are looking at. If that's the case, then we are going to be living longer. If you're going to be living longer and unwell, that's not acceptable. So what we are looking at is wellness, trying to detect what is known as chronic inflammation, shifting from healthcare to wellness, shifting from diagnose and cure to predict and prevent. So instead of measuring BP and measuring sugar, which is already a disease, you are measuring chronic inflammation, which will allow you to prevent the disease using hardware and AI. The other area is media and entertainment. If you look at jobs, this 8-hour job situation is not going to be continuing. It is a fact that unless we go 4 hours or something like that, we are not going to be able to give jobs to all the people that we have. If that is the case, what do we have? We have time. If we have time, we need media and entertainment. So that's another area we feel that techniques such as generative adversarial networks will be able to provide very creative means of entertainment. So I mentioned that in the context of creating jobs in a vibrant city, you cannot be only an old age economy. You cannot only be producing steel and expect that the youth will be able to gravitate towards the city. So while Amravati is planning its city, it should look at what are the future opportunities, not just at the past opportunities. So I'll just stop there. I'll use the time for asking questions to talk about the other points I have. The other points are going to be in the area of course, we talked about jobs, but we have to talk about entertainment, we have to talk about wellness, we have to talk about education, we have to talk about government, police, and courts. And we have to talk about the corporate world. All of this, I have a wonderful panel that will help me facilitate. So if I can request, I'll take this privilege as a moderator to go in an order which I deem okay. So if I can request Ms. Stefania Costanza, CG of Italy in Mumbai, to take the first opportunity to share her thoughts on how do we go about building happy cities. By the way, happy Valentine's Day as well to all of you. Please join me in welcoming Stephanie. Wherever you are comfortable. You can do it right there. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thanks also for this privilege of being the first taking the floor today, and also the one who unfortunately is not a technician. I am a diplomat. I'm the Consul General of Italy, and I'm based in Mumbai. So, of course, my knowledge of city planning and technology, etc., it's not deep. But let me share some thoughts that I hope could be interesting for everyone here today. There's a very strong relations that we all know between the city as an environment for people living in and the economic and productive fabric of the city itself. Italy is a country that was genetically born with small towns. The small towns, they do always have more or less the kind of same structure. We go, every main street ends in a square. And there's a reason for that, because the square is the place where you meet people, where usually a market is. So it's a meeting place, and it's the place where the business is going on. This is our model. Being a diplomat, I was posted also in other parts of the world, and I lived in different cities that were conceived in a different way. And I could experiment firsthand how different can be the lifestyle related to the kind of planning that the city has. Now, what we do have a law in Italy that was approved in 1942. It's quite long time ago. It was updated in the meantime, and it is a general law stating how a city planning, a master plan of the city should be done. And it is done at the level of the city. Because the idea is that you have to plan very close to the people. How do we do that today? Actually, we do a lot of research. We go outside and we ask people what kind, not exactly what they want, but what kind of habits do they have in order to meet the requirements for the kind of life that they already have. This is the best way to understand how consumers consume, for instance, and provide a conducive environment for that. Now, we can argue that happiness is not just a matter of economic growth. Economic growth is necessary, it's the base, but probably it's not enough anyway. So what do we need? Do we need cultural environment? Social environment, sociability, other than the social networks, I mean the real ones, people getting together. We do need, of course, school, hospitals, and all the kind of social facilities. Our model usually is that whenever, after a master plan, we do loan the land, a plot of land, for a certain destination of use to the private sector. The private sector is also obliged, under signing contracts for that, to build either a school or another kind of social facility. And this is a way also of giving back. So there's a sort of ecosystem that every city, either big or small, can sustain. Now, in Italy, we don't have any more land, basically. We are, compared to India, we are a very small country geographically wise, so it's not that we are going to have much space to expand. So we are going through in the last 20 years to recuperate what we have and try to upgrade it. So we are in a different phase, not starting from the scratch. The last cities that were planned from the scratch, from nothing, were back in the 30s of the last century, and still they are good planned. But in this different setting, I can tell you, public investment were critical, actually. Two examples for Italy. One is Milan, the other one is Turin. Both cities converted themselves from just working city, producing goods and with plants, into tourist destination. This is not easy, of course. It's a sort of rebranding of the city, and that was possible also thanks to two main events. One was the Olympic in the case of Turin, Winter Olympics, and in case of Milan, there was the Expo in 2015. So very successful in terms of changing thanks to what the public, in terms of services, was giving. What I think it is important, and I share those thoughts with many of architects also here in India, is that whenever you have someone living somewhere, they do need to have sense of ownership of the place, and that foster actually nurtures the commitment to the place and the attachment to that. You have to empower people living in a place, whatever this place is. Once you get those two elements, it is easier to have that kind of vibration that you were talking about. Why you do live somewhere other than, of course, being born and deciding to live there. There's a taking into account of where you are, you want to be there, especially in the big cities as we're experiencing now, especially in India, when you are a newcomer I live in Mumbai, so I can tell you, Mumbai is, of course, a privileged destination for many people coming from other walks of life and other part of the country. What could be the game changer is the sense of ownership. So you're not just passing by anymore, but you really are a citizen living there. And then empowering people. And I don't know if I consumed all my time or...
No, this is good. Maybe if you can also... I've been to Florence as an example. And you have tons of museums. You know, you throw a stone, you'll hit a museum. You throw a stone, you'll hit a sculpture. Hopefully you don't hit a painting. That will damage the painting. But if you can talk a little bit about how do you showcase. For example, in this area, Amravati, you have so many things to showcase. But I will guarantee you that we will not, going by past experience. So if you can help us.
Again, I think this is a common language that we have, first of all. India and Italy, we do share the language of beauty. But both people, our people, are naturally exposed to beauty because you have all your cultural heritage. We do. It is not by chance that we are the two countries that host the largest number of UNESCO sites, just to say something. And but of course, it is not only a matter of what you have, but how you preserve it. So we learned, probably also because we didn't have that much of space, we learned a long time ago that what we do is not to, it's the principle of reusing. We do reuse the space. So we do not cancel or deny what was before. Even though if it came from colonization, I lived part of my life in Florence, as I've been there for 5 years, and it's a city that I love. But I'm coming from the very south of Italy, from Sicily, from the capital of Sicily. So it's a city that's been invaded many times. Yeah. And you can find layers and layers. The Arabic ones, then the French time, the German time, the Spanish time that is still very, very present, etc.
Do you identify with a layered heritage yourself?
Yes. Yeah. I am a perfect product of all this, of all this mix-up. So I think starting with this idea that we always preserve what came before and just reuse it in a different way, there's why we do preserve everything. Yeah. Now, of course, countries that have more space, they're less inclined to do that. Because, of course, you can just move to the next plot of land. But I think it came the time also for India to take advantage of this enormous cultural heritage. Not because for the sake of showcasing what it was, but because it tells you who you are. And if you know where you're from, you definitely can understand where you're going. Yeah. It is much easier. So Italy is currently working very closely with some of the museum and cultural institutions, especially, of course, in the south where I am based, doing skills upgrading for museum management, theater management, etc. Because, of course, it's a science in itself.
So could you also comment, like Sicily, for example, it has a soul. What would you describe as the soul of Sicily?
Good food.
Good food, yeah, that's what I was thinking. So, Stefania, if you can hold your thoughts, we'll come back to you.
With pleasure, thanks.
And if I can request Mr. Hugo Salamao. Yes. So, if you could, thank you. If you could share your thoughts, and coming from Brazil.
Yes, exactly. Thank you very much.
I'm sure going to sing a song for us and dance.
Well, if you want, at the end.
Yeah.
But thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. Subodayam. And, well, first of all, I'm introducing my city that I think most of you don't know. And, well, I always joke when I'm abroad that Belo Horizonte is the biggest unknown city in Brazil. And maybe you know it, I don't know how much you follow World Cup here, but this is the city where Brazil lost for 7-1 to Germany. So, well, this is something that we are not very proud of, but, well, sometimes we are known for it. But, well, Belo Horizonte is the third largest city in Brazil after São Paulo and Rio, and actually the third metropolitan region, and also the seventh in Latin America, with a population of almost 6 million inhabitants. We have a very high human development index and a great GDP comparable with countries like Paraguay and Uruguay. But also we are UNESCO World Heritage Site and the capital with the highest access to culture in Brazil. We are a talent hub with more than 200,000 new enrollments in university every year, and the main Brazilian startup ecosystem. We lose to São Paulo in number, but in quality, we are the main ecosystem. And one example of that is that we are the only research and development Google century in Latin America, and one of the only 3 centuries that have the search algorithms of Google. So this is a little bit of our ecosystem. But, well, talking about that, and there you have some beautiful pictures of our city. I will talk about public policies that, in certain way, are directly connected with creating a vibrant ecosystem for youth entrepreneurs. So I'll start with urban planning. And we've talked about that a lot on the last years. I'm also not a specialist. I'm a cities diplomat as well. But, well, and related to that, we, in 2016, we had the 3rd UN Conference on Housing and Sustainable Urban Development held in Quito. And from this conference, as a result of this conference, we had the new urban agenda that now have the cutting-edge guidelines to policies, practices, and everything else related to developing modern, connected, and human-focused cities. So we took those guidelines and those principles to rethink the way we are planning the city. And now we just finished the new master plan. Our current master plan, I think, is 30, 40 years old. And we cannot think of new cities and new strategies and new planning with old structures, with old regulations. So we are just adapting this new paradigm to our reality. And this is, of course, fostering innovation and, well, giving space for people instead of cars and avenues and buildings and so on. Thinking first on our citizens and how to better develop our city, with those strategies. And the second one is technology. Technology, we have a company, a cities company focused on that, And something that is not very common in South America and in Brazil especially is teaching IT and teaching things related to computer science and so on. And we are doing it right now in our schools. So thousands and thousands of children and teenagers are having classes of IT, programming, and so on. And those children and teenagers in a couple of years and decades will be new entrepreneurs that could definitely channel new paths for our development. And the other one is an IoT lab that is open to local entrepreneurs and also international entrepreneurs willing to prototype and test solutions for the city and seeking to promote business, innovation, and improving people's quality of life. And well, the third one is creating new development strategies by having this green, smart, and creative city strategy. And the green has been a long-term policy structure to generate energy efficiency, waste management, a better waste management with circular economy and so on, and mobility to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And we have so far both national and international recognitions for that. And again, talking about global landmarks on that, we are following the Paris Agreement, and most of our policies currently are related to actually to the Brazilian commitments to the NDCs that Brazil applies to the Paris Agreement. And currently, it is possible that Brazil withdraw from the Paris Agreement, something that's not welcome. But if it happens, the city will keep working to move on these issues. And the last thing is creativity. We are a very well-known city for our gastronomy, art, and music, IT, and many creative sectors. But we don't sell it very well, and we don't know how to, we still don't have developed as much as it could. So we are creating new strategies, specifically with the Inter-American Development Bank, to better communicate and engage local entrepreneurs to, really create and make Belo Horizonte to be known as a creative city. And to finalize, I would like to presentate the international meeting of Happy Cities that is going to be held in Belo Horizonte this June from 11 to 15. And this actually is the main reason we are getting connected to Amaravati. And this is a meeting that is being held since 2015. First it was held in Quilota, Chile, but now it just moved to Belo Horizonte. Then we are hosting the 5th meeting. And it gathers mainly Latin American leaders and representatives, but now we are trying to expand it globally. And gathering, as you are doing here, public sector, companies, academia, experts, and many stakeholders to, really think about and discuss and create new strategies, processes that put people in the center of decision-making processes and creating better cities and better and happy spaces for the future. Our 7 thematic axes are smart cities and sustainable, inclusive, cooperative, creative, effective, and playing cities. So I hope I can meet some of you there. And again, thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you. So you can definitely meet as many as you want, provided you give the tickets.
Oh, yes, sure.
So, but I'll ask you a similar question, which I wanted answered from a standpoint of your city's soul. Would you consider music to be the soul, something else? What do the youth do for entertainment?
Well, we just had this study from the Ministry of Culture that said that youth in Belo Horizonte and, well, actually general public, but also youth, have more access to concerts and to theaters, cinemas, and currently we kind of changed and shift from a policy that used to avoid everything on the streets, like concerts and music and presentations and everything else, to a policy that allows everything. So people need to occupy the city, and the city is made for them.
Great.
So this shift is kind of...
And Hugo, what is your favorite entertainment?
Music.
Good.
Yeah, and Carnival that's going to be held in a couple of weeks.
Thank you, thank you.
You're
again.
also welcome there.
Yeah.
And now we actually, this is a good question because we now have one of the major carnivals in Brazil. Well, there was almost anything 5 years ago, but now we have the second best carnival in Brazil, comparable to Salvador and Rio de Janeiro. And then, well, if some of you want to join us also, you are very welcome.
Thank you, Hugo. So if I can now request Mr. D. Ramakrishna, CEO of F-Tronics, to share his thoughts, please. D, yeah.
Good morning to all of you. I would like to talk more of a soft nature. When you look into the Indian perspective, before 1750, India and China has almost 25% of the world GDP. But afterwards, when really the first industrial revolution happened, India not adopted for the industry, that's the steam engine and all that. Then the second industrial revolution, when it started around 1900, again, India is not adopted. Because of that, China and India GDPs are gone as low as 3% of the world GDP. But now, the third industrial revolution and fourth industrial revolution also, of course, China started applying that, but India still not gone into that. So what is happening today? Today, people are talking about value. Value, previously we used to talk about quality, cost, and all that. Today, people are talking about value. Overall benefits divided by lifetime ownership cost of any product. Now, the challenges are for the entrepreneurs, identify the value and create the value, deliver the value, and scale up, and then refine it. That's where really the ecosystem has to work now. Now, what is that the world develop? You need to create wealth. Now, the wealth creation is always through the value to the customer. So that will be by productivity, by innovation. This is all that skills, attitudes, knowledge, creativity, all that. Now, end of the day, to be happy, value to all the stakeholders, whether it is a customer, government, suppliers, employees, shareholders, all that people should get benefited. That's the dimension which we have to take it. Today, biggest challenge in the industry or the world is the product life cycles are getting shrunken very rapidly. When the product life cycles are getting shrunken very rapidly, what to do, how to create new products and new solutions to the world, this is where really the challenge. But unfortunately, people doesn't like to take the challenges because known market and known technologies, people like to work. But unknown technologies, unknown market, they are very risky. And this is where really the challenges are going to be there. Now with the challenges of for a fourth industrial revolution, previously the automation is there, but today the system is connected to the systems. Are we able to connect all that with happily? And because the worldwide lot of challenges will be there, how to get connected. The forces of disruption, all of us know, social media, mobile, analytics, and then cloud computing, these are all now present forces which are available. But the future or the present coming up technologies like IoT, AI, machine learning, and cloud computing, digital twins, they are going to be the upcoming technologies. With all that technologies, the system of systems, how it's going to be highly disruptive, highly complexity, very dynamic. These type of technologies, how to utilize and bring the value to the society. Now, if you take a data, we'll be able to understand what happened. With that, we'll be able to take a better decision and then better actions. So this is how the things, when you have diagnostic, why did it happen? If you are able to apply the machine learning and all, we'll be able to understand cause and effect. With that, we'll be able to take better decisions and better actions. If you are able to predict even the future, what is going to happen, we'll be able to do in a much better decision. Finally, the autonomous systems, it is going to give the suggestion what to do, what type of decisions we have to do to get the actionable request. This is where really the autonomous systems and all working. But what motivates us anywhere in the world? One is basically fame. People look for fame. Another is a fear. That means how I live and what is my livelihood or whatever the situations. Other direction is whether I get money or benefits or otherwise power. This is where the people get motivated with these dimensions across the world. More so in India, I will feel this is the biggest challenge. So what is that now today need to be taken? Are we going to work with purpose?
Ram, if you don't mind, I think you have a comment.
Yeah? I'm sorry, no, but I didn't want to.
That's okay. It will make it more interesting.
But how about love?
Huh? Love?
Fame, power, money, fear, and love?
Yeah, love also, basically, I have my own doubts, really, how the thing happens.
It's not meant to capture everybody.
Yeah. Really, what needs to be done is the need to look into the purpose. And then, are we having a mastery in solving the problem or doing the things? Other direction is, are you looking with the autonomy? Autonomy means, are we carrying all that, what is the past? That means 1700 years or 100,000 years back, or that are we carrying, and are we really looking with a questioning everything? What is right, what is wrong, what is the better way to do the things? That is where autonomy is really missing. Basically, the questioning is really one of the biggest challenge.
So if I can again, fame, power, money and fear, isn't this us old people, the youngsters don't want fame, they don't want power, they want to be left alone, they want just enough money, they're afraid of nothing.
Of course.
And they want love.
No,
just for thinking.
Of course, they are still, I believe, when I am interacting with very young people in our organization, I see a lot of times the comparison is one of the things happening from the parents. They want to earn more money for the parents' sake, not for them. And they want to construct immediately, say, some building and some of the things. That's where, again, it's going towards that dimensionally, money. The other thing, comparison is making fame.
And then they will fall in love and bring somebody into that building.
Yeah?
Then they'll fall in love and bring somebody into the building.
No, that is also maybe sometimes arrangements. Not really bonding as we look into that. So these motivational dimensions has to be looked into it. How to drive the things. Finally, the entire dimension. No other things. So today, if you want to get results, you need to have capabilities to get results. How to get the capabilities? What is the capabilities we need to today with today's technologies? That means you can't look into the technologies which are fast, but we have to apply the today's technologies. For that, what are the practices is needed? What type of mindset is needed? Mindset plus practice into technology will give the capabilities of today, and that should give the results of today. That's where really when I look back into the Indian culture and Indian these things, still we will be talking about Ramayana, Mahabharata, or all that history, and we will be talking about Sri Krishna Deva Raya, where Ashtadikgajas are there, where they will be talking pricing, but not really what to do in a ground reality. A young kid, if he's born, what is that right to? First thing is how we keep my body intact. That means make them wellness for 100 years or plus. How do I keep this body, first physical body, then mental body, and then how I have to learn my practices towards the livelihood and earning and towards that dimension. Are we training them towards that practices? That's where really the softness of the important of the aspects. So are we working with the present technologies and present circumstances? This is where really the problem is. Unfortunately, today there is no trust because of whatever the reason it is. So the trust will be a function of results, predictability. That results is going to be predictable to the context and to the visibility. My wife never trusts me whenever she asks me to withdraw money from my bank because I successfully forget every time. That's where she calls immediately my secretary after going to the office, take signature and withdraw the money. That's where the contextual trust is a very, very important. Trust is not a universal for everything, basically. Now, today, everybody is talking about design thinking, where we understand the needs of the people and then define it and ideate it and prototype it and test it. This is today's concept. Today, do you need kitchen in home? That's where my question is always. Today, if you want to be more productive house, it doesn't need kitchen because you want to make only small food, which will, again, compromises for the different tastes and all that. So this type of need dimension has to be relooked into it with the design thinking, how to build the society more productive, because in Indian context, women may be spending 3-4 hours daily on kitchen and spending a lot of time. That is a very big problem. Today,
so if you can help us summarize, and then you can come back to your point.
Last slide. So today's capabilities with the digital era, what it is needed is this. Basically, I don't want to take much time, so thank you.
Thank you so much. So if I can just ask one follow-up question. You mentioned risk. And Mr. Ramakrishna, where are you from? Andhra Pradesh?
I am from Guntur district.
Guntur district. So do you see that capability of risk-taking? What is the soul of let's say, what will be Amravati? What should be the soul of Amravati?
Yeah, Amravati should be, of course, this area has more entrepreneurs in my opinion, though they are not developed in this area, but they were traveled across the world. They traveled to the Hyderabad or Chennai or even you are example. So like that, lot of people were there. Entrepreneur mindset is there. But only thing is we need to create right aspirations and the right opportunities.
But if we can debate that, are they risk takers or are they hard workers?
No, they are risk takers.
They are risk takers. Good to hear. Thank you so much. Thank you. So if I can now request Mr. Satish Kamath, President of Sri City, and he has first-hand experience to talk about a greenfield project. Is it completely greenfield or you...
completely greenfield.
Completely.
Yeah, it's truly greenfield. And we have a very clear definition of greenfield. If it is not piggybacking on any of the existing cities' infrastructures, it is greenfield.
Yeah.
Thank you for giving me an opportunity to express my thoughts here. It's not often that we talk about entrepreneurship and how a city is promoting entrepreneurship and how the city needs to be designed to promote entrepreneurship. And secondly, connecting it with subjective ideas like happiness, So I'm here representing Sri City, which is a 10,000-acre greenfield, manufacturing-driven city. We have more than 170 industries operational within Green City in Sri City, and we have almost created 50,000 new jobs in that area. The future is how to make it an integrated city with a lot of permanent population. And permanent population comes starting with work. Then they would live there, so they need houses. When they live there, they need shopping complexes, entertainment, playgrounds, social, life. And they need education and such kind of things. So in a sequence we are going, we started 10 years back. We have created more than 50,000 jobs in the last, so much so that, about almost half of Andhra Pradesh's industrial jobs were created in Sri City in the last 3 years. So that's another qualification that I have to speak on the panel is that individually I am a failed entrepreneur. Not only that, I am father of a failed entrepreneur. So I know what the entrepreneurs miss and what the entrepreneurs need And right from the beginning, right from the scratch, whenever we were designing the city features and details, we all the time tried to make it friendly to people who want to start new businesses, including coming and setting up manufacturing facilities there. So, so I will probably, given a chance, talk about the whys, whats, and how of entrepreneurship and how to connect it to cities.
Maybe if you could, you have a startup incubator.
Yeah.
If you could dwell a little more on that.
Yeah. So one of the things that we did in our city was, right from the day one, instead of calling something as an office, we call that as a business center or an incubation center. Why? Because anybody who's coming and setting up a new industry is a startup, at least in my city. They may be a big company like a PepsiCo or a Isuzu Motors, but in my city, they are a startup because they're new to that environment. So we call our, we have a 130,000 square feet incubation center. And we have also set up many factory sheds that are called the ready-built factories. So if I can't afford, I don't have the capital to invest, I can rent a factory and start my work. Apart from that, we knew that common facilities like training centers, testing centers, and how they can work with the academia as well as in other industries, so that they don't need dedicated facilities for developing their product or testing their product. They could possibly use shared products. So we have already developed training center with the help of TVS, which is a big name in India. So they focus on the automotive and the industrial skill sets and facilities. And we have developed a training center with the help of Siemens, which helps in the CNC and the electronics and the automation facility. Over a period of time, we are opening it up to the local academia also. We have a triple IT operational, and there are a lot of people who are they start enterprises in their hostel dorms and they want to take it forward. We are encouraging them to work with the industry and find what may work.
How about e-governance? Do you have a smart city? What is your definition? If it's a smart city, what's your definition of that?
That's another abused, loosely used word like smart city. We basically feel that smart city is not one ton of technology. Technology companies will differ with my view, but the thing is, let's say doing something which is completely nothing to do with technology can also be smart. And we say that
as long as it is citizen focused.
So if you can sort of make your money run longer with some practices and design features, that is smart, because you're trying to make sure that the city is.
So if you look at what, at least in the technology field, they use the definition is leveraging IT and digital and other technology aspects for benefiting the citizen. If you use that definition.
Actually, if you see, the new definition of smart is now much more mature compared to what it was 5 years back. Because they have also seen that, just flogging the horse of technology may not work in countries like India. Because the Indian cities are, like ma'am pointed out, they are more about people. If the last person on the ground does not see any benefit of all that technology that is being put into the city, or does not get the benefit of that, they just reject it as frivolous, investment. you get the ego satisfaction that you did something smart, but the last person on the ground does not
Even as a
really.
greenfield project, it's interesting to see that is your thought. I mean, respect it because it's from experience.
Yeah. So when we planned, we basically wanted to make the city in such a manner that I'm personally a big fan of European cities. They are immensely walkable, compact, and like ma'am pointed out, the city areas are multi-use. Let's say if you see that element nowadays in shared workplaces, the biggest hot thing in the real estate area.
But also the governments are
spaces.
transparent, and that transparency comes from all data being visible to the citizens.
Yeah.
And that is part of the future, and I'm sure that's your part of your thinking as well.
So two things we did. One
So
was
the concern, if you can answer that, is that see if you have the skills and you have a green field and you have thought through and picked what technology works and what doesn't work, great. But if we just shun it because we don't understand, that is an issue. I'm sure that's not what you're saying.
no. I mean, I come from technology background.
Exactly, yeah.
I understand technology more than most city guys, but we deliberately do it in phases. What will make the maximum impact for the investment that is being made? So I was just trying to say that if a new restaurant or a new eatery is being planned, we would tell them that why don't you plan it in such a manner that in a day it can be used as an office, in the evening it can be used as a cafe, and maybe in the night it could be used as a place for people to sleep.
But for the
Why not?
the availability of that place for industry or cafe or whatever, you can leverage technology. So there's no need to say one or the other. You can do both.
So where we used technology was the invisible part, not so visible. So we use technology in our water treatment plants, sewage treatment plants, water network.
Absolutely.
To make sure that the leakages are detected. I have sensors. We've been using IoT for more period than most other cities in India. They're getting into IoT now. We were one of the first people to set up 8 megawatts of solar facility. We were the first to set up the net metering use of...
that is proper technology, actually.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we use technology, but not for the heck of using technology. And that is what has helped us to make maximum impact for what we are investing.
All right. So Satish, if you can hold your thoughts, two more gentlemen have to speak. And then if you can think about your questions for the wonderful panelists, after the two speakers, we'll have some time. So now if I can request Mr. Parag Dole, MD of Inventors. He comes from a background where he can talk about funding. In a new city, I'm sure creating jobs is not possible without having access to funds. So if you can take away from there.
Okay, thank you. So as he mentioned, I come from a technology investing background. That's what I've done all my life. So I don't actually spend a lot of time thinking about cities. But what I will maybe do is to compare the city that I know best, which is I worked out of Bangalore for a long while, with some of the other cities in India, and try and paint a picture as to what Bangalore's strengths are, weaknesses are, vis-a-vis the others. And I'll try and bring in Amravati and I guess Vijayawada as we go along. So I think Bangalore, if I look at it, the technology entrepreneurship in that particular area, I think one great thing going for Bangalore, like it or not, is the weather. Okay, honestly, that's Bangalore's biggest advantage, the moderate weather, and Vijayawada probably has a disadvantage from that front. the people gravitate towards good weather. That just happens. Silicon Valley is another very good example of that. The other things that Bangalore got right probably was that it had a base of all of these public sector undertakings or research labs, the NALs, the HALs, the GTREs is what I'm talking about. This is going way back, the defense establishments, the 60s, the 70s. People came out of there, set up their entrepreneurship networks, et cetera, and this, the entrepreneurship, tech entrepreneurship in particular, grew from there. The third thing was institutions like ISC, very good engineering colleges. I think you are from RVC, for example. There is BESIT, which is a very good college now. There is an IM there, et cetera, et cetera. Stanford to Silicon Valley, that connection, so to speak. I think Bangalore got that right. I'm told Vijayawada has a lot of educational institutions around it as well, and that really helps. Fourth, obviously, I think Bangalore got lucky. The year 2000 problem, software industry was based there. The Infosys, Wipros started there. It kind of expanded. And the young people now want to come back to Bangalore simply because all their friends from the IITs, NITs, wherever you went to, they now live in Bangalore. So Bangalore now has become the testing ground for anything. And while Satish has a slightly different point of view, I think what is happening today is that technology is beginning to intersect with daily life. For example, you take shared biking, for example. It could be two-wheelers or, for that matter, a bicycle as we know it. And that kind of a thing, given the weather, given the young crowd that will use it, et cetera, the best place to try it out today is Bangalore. The younger people and we older people will always say that about younger people, and our parents said that about us. The younger people are different in some ways, in many ways, the way they think, for example. They will never rent furniture. They will never buy furniture, for example. Everything seems to be, they will order food from outside, et cetera, et cetera. So the younger people who work with us have such a different mentality from ours in terms of spending and the willingness to experiment, and that Bangalore brings beautifully. The culture in Bangalore also, because it is a very cosmopolitan city now. It is no longer, let us say, a Kannadiga city, etc., etc. And some cities like Chennai suffered on account of that. Some other cities like Pune, take Pune, Pune is a very peculiar city. People tend to gravitate. Anybody who's lived in Pune will want to go back to Pune for whatever reason. But the base there in a city like Pune or in a place like Chennai is not very huge. So if you're looking for a special talent, let's say somebody who has design expertise, or for that matter, a product manager 5 years back, you wouldn't find it. Bangalore, on the other hand, has that. When I talk about culture, I also contrast it to my home state. I come from West Bengal. In Calcutta, we managed to create a culture which just shunned entrepreneurship, isn't it? If you talk to entrepreneurs there, they will tell you that their employees think that working from 8 to 5 is, I mean, if they work beyond 5, they will have to be paid overtime and things like that. So in a startup, that's just not possible. That's the kind of culture we ended up creating thanks to the communist government and the current government as well. That is what Bangalore avoided. And what has happened to Bengal? Now 5% of Bangalore's population is actually Bengali. You hear, Bengali more often than you hear many other languages in Bangalore. So that's an example of what not to do. And Bangalore, in some senses, and it happened organically. I don't think it's a very dynamic government, honestly. The Andhra government, the Telangana government are far more dynamic. The southern states are very, very dynamic in general. But Bangalore, it happened bottoms up, but it's reached a place where for any city, it is now the benchmark, like it or not. Even Mumbai has been left way behind. You started your company, you could have started it in Mumbai, but you chose to come to Bangalore. Similarly, Ola, OLX, etc. Delhi has certain advantages. For example, if you're an e-commerce company, because the distributors are all based there, Delhi has the capital base. If you are a regulated business, etc., you could be based in Delhi. So these are the only two horses in the race now, in my mind, in terms of entrepreneurship, tech entrepreneurship in this country. Everybody else, the Hyderabad's, the Amravatis, all of these newer places, so to speak, are now in a race to catch up. That's all I had for myself.
So can you comment on Bangalore's roads?
That is an obvious problem. I mean, I think traffic is our biggest weakness, and the amount of time we spend there. Hopefully, the metro coming up will change some of that, but the speed at which things progress is...
And Parag, if you can also comment on the soul of Bangalore, since you can contrast in so many different ways. Do you have a comment on that? What would you consider?
So I think it's vibrant, it's young. I think beer probably captures it all. So it's been the pub capital of the country for a long, long time.
Yeah. Thanks, Parag. If I can, and intentionally we kept the last speaker for the last, because in a way, Mr. Manohar Rao is the customer for this, consuming what we are discussing also. And we would love to hear from you, your plans, of course, but also maybe, pain areas where you still don't have answers. And maybe somebody in the audience can help you with that.
It's very good morning and welcome to all of you to Amaravati, the greenfield city, capital city of Andhra Pradesh, which is in the making. And this discussion is very, very important for a greenfield city like Amaravati. And the foundations of Amaravati, as all of you know, are from the land pooling scheme. The land pooling scheme is nothing but a very, very great example of looking into future by the participants and their risk-taking appetite. For example, in any country, to start up some infrastructure project or to build some new city, etc., you need land. Without land, you can't even move an inch. But in India and elsewhere across the country, across the world, always this land acquisition ends up in various legal battles. Thereby, it is the projects get stagnated. But here, because the farmers have seen the value proposition that in case we hand over our lands to the land pooling scheme announced by the government, their future is going to be secure. Their children's future is going to be secure. And the city is going to grow. Along with the city, we are also going to grow. This kind of understanding is the fundamental thing for any entrepreneurial attempt. That way, as Mr. Ramakrishna was mentioning, the people from this part of the country are very, very enterprising. And they are all over the world. Many great projects they have taken up. If you talk about infrastructure project, whether it is in irrigation or in airport sector, the first names that come to my mind or to anyone's mind is from Andhra Pradesh. So the land pooling scheme is a very, very partnership oriented and wealth creation for all the stakeholders. That way the fundamentals of the city itself are in the direction of working together. So I would like to say that Amaravati has done it in its own fashion on a very, very strong note, starting with the land pooling scheme. But now, there are many lessons for greenfield cities. we need to take from many other growing cities. And before going into that, I would like to run through a few slides which will make me to point out to certain things. So India is it is in the startup canvas. It's very, very promising startup canvas for India. And you know, it is second largest startup ecosystem in the world, and with 20,000 startups in India. But if you see across India, the people, the inclination towards entrepreneurship is also very, very high. People would love to go for their own businesses, provided there is an opportunity. And if the next slide is seen, but they are all fearing for the risk of failure. So to bridge this gap, basically the ecosystem makes the difference. The ecosystem is very, very important to bridge the gap of aspiration to go for entrepreneurship and their apprehension about the failure of risk of failure. If you see, some of the sectors that are growing across the globe, the average age of the founder is around 35 years. That means more and more young entrepreneurs are entering into advanced technologies, advanced sectors. Their risk appetite is very, very high. So this is one pointer for any greenfield city to take up, to come up with such kind of ecosystems. And if you see in any entrepreneurial thing, first thing is the founder's mindset. As already I mentioned, the farmers, they have very, very strong founder mindset. They are the founding fathers of Amaravati. And of course, the ecosystem, it consists of so many things, all of us know that. But if you see into the ecosystem, some insights are specific to a greenfield city. Some of the lessons can be learned from this kind of insights. One is local connectedness. The sense of community is very, very important. And local relationships and collisions. Collisions like meeting some expert in this kind of summits, in this kind of discussions. Otherwise, I wouldn't be meeting him in my life. So that kind of activities also will trigger a lot of new ideas, and they are very good for startup strengthening. And it is found that highly connected founders enjoy a higher rate of success, and less connected startups, they are not growing very good. And if you look at the gender approach to this entrepreneurship, there's a very interesting TED talk. All of us can search on the net. In US, almost 39% of the startups and businesses are owned by women entrepreneurs, but they are able to raise only 2% of the funding from the VCs. And a study was conducted. It was found finally that the VCs, when a male entrepreneur is approaching the VC, the kind of questions they are put to are different. When a female entrepreneur is visiting a VC for funding purpose, the kind of questions being asked to put to the female entrepreneur are different. For a male entrepreneur, the general set of questions are, how are you looking at enhancing your turnover in next coming 2 years? What are all the steps you are going to take to double your profits? These kind of questions are put. They are all very positive questions. But on the other side, when the kind of questions that are put to female entrepreneurs are that, how are you taking care of the risk in this project? Whether it is going to grow in this kind of market competition. So there are very conservative questions. When conservative questions are asked, the conservative kind of responses only will come up. Thereby, the funding is dwindling. This kind of study was conducted, and I'm just quoting from one TED talk. And some research also shows that female entrepreneurs are more locally connected than male founders. Why I'm showing all these things is they are all pointers for building a new city, greenfield city. We need to take all these kind of inputs while we create our ecosystems, while we design our cities for mobility and interactions. And another important factor for greenfield cities is the immigrant entrepreneurs. The research shows that immigrant entrepreneurs make important contributions to local and national economies. And they are very, very strong risk takers because they have left their own land and they are living in other places. That itself shows that they are risk takers. So when we are stating and when we are declaring the Amaravati as the people's capital, we expect that people from all over the globe should come and then reside in Amaravati. We are hoping that Amaravati shall be the global destination of people, investments, and jobs. This is our most oft mentioned statement. That includes people. People from all over the world shall come and then reside in this global city and bring in investments, that is the entrepreneurial investments, and then create jobs for the local market. Now, if you look at the factors of production, at one point in time, we were talking about land, capital, and labor. Mr. Parag was mentioning about Kolkata and the kind of labor working, and if they are asked to work little more, the kind of incentives to be given, the kind of friction that keeps on happening, etc. At one point in time, without land and huge capital and labor, nothing was moving. But now, if you have an idea and you are supported by technology and you are pooling the resources, there is a huge potential to start up your startup in no time. I mean, the gestation period would be hardly a month or even days. I was reading one particular example in a local newspaper 2 days back or 3 days back. One girl was working in some software industry, and she was feeling that every day she was going to the office and coming back and not able to eat good food cooked by herself at home. Whenever she was ordering something, she was not very satisfied with the kind of food she was getting. So what she has done was that she came up with a small app, that is technology. The idea is she's having an idea and she used the technology. She has prepared a small app and she has mapped local chefs, small-time cooks who are all cooking for their livelihood. She has profiled them with beautiful photographs and what kind of food they can make. And then she has trained them to make qualitative food, taking hygiene into consideration. And then all these chefs have been uploaded onto the app. It is nothing but pooling of resources. And anyone who wants to get some local dish to be cooked, and they can have a preference of that particular chef also. I want to get that food from that chef. So it is a win-win situation for all those chefs around, small-time chefs, and the entrepreneur. So now the factors of production are changing. I mean, the entire scenario is changing. We need to capture on this while we design our cities. So with all this kind of inputs, there can be many more. I'm just showing some indicative inputs. Can we talk about a city wherein the characteristic of the city itself, entrepreneurship? There may be so many cities known for so many things. For example, if I talk about Mumbai, the thing that comes to my mind is it is financial headquarters of India. That way, can a city be the headquarters of entrepreneurship? Now, in a city, creation of jobs is one part, and coming up with more and more entrepreneurial ventures is another part. Then, how we can design such cities to enhance this kind of entrepreneurship? So, in the later part of our discussion, I will try to address these two questions vis-a-vis Amaravati. How we have planned and designed that will help the city to become the hub of entrepreneurship, and how we have planned to design the city. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Manohar Rao Garu. I think you hit the nail on the head by identifying entrepreneurship. We talked about risk-taking as the soul of the future Amravati. That would be a perfect segue. Wanted to check from the audience if you'd like to ask some questions. We can probably take one or two. We started half an hour late, so we are taking the 90 minutes we are allocated. So there's a question right there. If you can get a mic, please, to the gentleman there. Next to the camera. Run. Youth.
Good morning. My name is Dr. Georgie Varghese. I belong to a startup that was founded by my wife. She basically in the air pollution industry. My question is regarding bootstrapped startups. In the initial phases of a startup, where we're not really sure whether you want to go through the venture capital route or the angel investor route, bootstrap can be translated to say without aid. Obviously, that's not a feasible option. In terms of that, what can the government do to assist startups that haven't made up their mind yet, whether they want to go bootstrapped?
So could we maybe have Parag, you take a stab at it, and then we can have Manohar Rao Garu talk as well?
So, see, I'm not a great believer on the government helping individual startups in bootstrapping, etc. So, bootstrapping, know that VC money always comes with strings attached. Any money comes with strings attached. So if you love your freedom, if you do not want to go a certain way, for example, if you do not want to build a very big company or a very fast-growing company, then what I would recommend is not to take VC money. Keep it bootstrapped, etc., etc. Yes, the government can provide some grants. For example, Karnataka has a program called Elevate, up to 50 lakhs of grants. But where will that get you? They can never give you 5 crores, 10 crores. How many startups can they give it to? So do not, in my view, in my limited view, look for the government for these kind of things. It's resources, finding the resources to target the opportunity that you have is an entrepreneur's job, and you can't outsource it to the government. So
the one thing which I'll add to what Parag said is that, as an example, since I'm along the same journey, there is a entity called GITA, G-I-T-A, Global Innovative Technology Alliance, and it's bilateral. So as an example, the most funding goes into the relationship between India and Israel. So what GITA does, it's DST money, Department of Science and Technology money, for innovative startups. They will give up to 8 crores. And you also have to match that 8 crores. To Parag's point that it is not just some money which you get. On India's side, similarly, you can get 8 crores and match 8 crores on Israel's side. So that works out to 32 crores of total funding for a program. So you have to be connected to the ecosystem to know these opportunities exist. These are real opportunities. And this is just one bilateral. They have multiple, Canada and so on and so forth. So several of those. So would love to, I can talk to you offline. Maybe from a city standpoint, if, or I think both of you, if you can comment.
Yeah, as far as the government is concerned, government's responsibility is to provide the ecosystem, come up with a very, very strong policy framework. For example, in the government of AP, the IT policy is very, very proactive in the sense that for the first 3 years, if you are coming up with a startup, the rental for setting up that particular startup, it will be subsidized by 50% for 3 years at the cost of the government. So that kind of policy frameworks can come up, but rightly mentioned by Mr. Parag, it can't be individual specific. A policy framework is obviously there. Similarly, the second aspect of government's support to these startups is that it can come up with the real infrastructure and entrepreneurial development programs wherein skills are imparted. This kind of framework the government can come up with.
So again, I'll just add to that. If you look at US as an example, there is a Small Business Innovative Research Program, which is a grant. The grant is given for feasibility study and lab prototype. It's $100,000 and $350,000 to $500,000 for the lab prototype. So I would say that if you look at countries which have done well, there is a central incentivized mechanism. So these programs, SBIR programs, are meant to solve an existing problem for an agency which they can use. And the commercial application of that, you are free to use it, and it's your intellectual property. So there are models which we have as CII recommended to the government, and they are going through. This is central government. So the state and city, it's a different matter, and I totally agree. But Stephanie, you had a point to make.
Very briefly, I agree very much with what Mr. Manohara Rao was saying. I would like to echo that. Italy has 7,000 as a stock number, 7,000 startups, and the rate of survival is 87% to that. Out of, let's say we have our economic and productive fabric is largely made by SMEs, and the SMEs all over are 750,000. So 7,000, it's a relation of more or less of what you get of the overall. How we get there with two important, in my opinion, pretty important point. First, the conducive environment. It's not a matter of how much the government invests in your startup, but what can relieve from you. So cut the red tape, that's what we do. Tax relief, that's what we have for startups. And labor law, that as you might know in Europe, it's very strict and it's pretty heavy, could be really complicated for a startup. So we have special compact law in labor for that. So all those facilitations apply for a cycle of 4 years. But in those, of course, we also have grants. But it's not the point. The point is let you free to experiment without the burden of what a mature, more mature company usually go through. So we also have, and I think this is also very beneficial, we also are in the current study of how our SMEs are evolving. What we are seeing is that they do ask for less loans or grants from the banks, so from the traditional sector, and much more through crowdfunding and producing. We are the first country worldwide to have a law for crowdfunding, so it's pretty certain. But that means that wherever you have an idea, nowadays with the technology, you go on to the market and get a share. And I think this could be one of those, not solutions, but at least food for thought. So I really share that very much.
And at the same time, the Gita, which I talked about, has a bilateral agreement with Italy also. So there is a similar agreement there. If at all, we can take one more question with permission from
Gopi, I just
Deepika.
have a small...
Yeah, you have a comment?
Additional.
But is there any other question before... okay, Satish, why don't you?
Yeah. So, as Ravagaru told about the IT policy, the AP government has been very progressive in promoting, sort of promoting entrepreneurship in their own way. In our city, we have got about 100,000 square feet of incubation space. We have got it approved as a designated technology park to take advantage of the IT policy. So 50% comes from the government, rent comes from the government for 3 years, and 50% we waive it off from our side to bring the non-industrial workforce and the non-industrial businesses into the city. So cities can also contribute in their own way in promoting entrepreneurship and making sure that their bootstrapping costs and the bootstrapping period things are covered in a much, it's much more easier for them to survive that period and get to the seed funding or the next level of funding. So,
just, go ahead, Hugo.
Yeah, very briefly, this is a very good question, and I totally agree with it, Stefania. As the local government, we mainly help facilitating, and if we kind of take part of the burden, it is, something that already happened, the entrepreneurs and startups, but also facilitating, for example, access to funds and modernizing the legislation that most of times is very old and do not follow this fast movement that startups are inserted in, and also creating the best environment possible for them to develop.
Yeah. Thank you. And we have totally run out of the time as well. So first, let's give a round of applause to the wonderful panel. I made many notes to give you a summary, but I don't have the time. So I'll just say that it's a wonderful place to end with a battle cry that let's make Amravati a city of entrepreneurs. Thank you very much. And thank you again, panel.
Thank you very much, sir. And thank you very much to all our panelists. And a special thanks to you, Dr. Katragadda, because when you opened with a brief, a few anecdotes about Vijayawada and Amravati, and that's great because the kind of anecdotes that you shared aren't really available online as well. So it was really nice for all of us to know. Thank you for starting the day with that. A round of applause for him for having taken that initiative. And I also noticed you took the full 90 minutes. Good on you for that. We'd like to thank all our panelists one by one with a small memento. And I'm going to request Mr. Manohar Rao Garu, Ram Manohar Rao Garu, to please do the honors, sir. We'll start by thanking our very enthusiastic moderator, Dr. Gopichand Katragadda, founder and CEO, Mylan Foundry. Enthusiastic and knowledgeable. Mr. Satish Kamath, President, Sri City. Thank you for joining us, sir. Mr. Parag Dhol, MD, Inventus India. Mr. Hugo Salomão, International Relations Advisor, Belo Horizonte, Brazil. Thank you too for setting the context about your city. Mr. D. Ramakrishna, CEO, F-Tronics Systems. Thank you, sir, for your presentation. And, ma'am, may I get your name? Stefani. Miss Stefania from Italy. Thank you, ma'am. So Ms. Stefania raised the question of what about love on Valentine's Day. Thank you for adding that flavor. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Ramanohar Rao Garu, for participating in this session. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. So, ladies and gentlemen, we do have a short tea break, 15 minutes. So it's 12:10 by my watch, sir. So 12:10, so can we all gather here by 12:25? During your tea break, you could also go to the breakout sessions which are happening, the ones that are happening in Amravati Hall. There's one going on right now as we speak. You could go over there and see if something there interests you. But we will reconvene here at 12:25 and begin the next panel discussion. Sorry, 11:25. I'm really sorry. 11:25. 11:25.